Welcome to Pathways to Greatness, where we explore the journeys of exceptional individuals who have achieved remarkable success in their fields. Whether you're an aspiring athlete, a business leader, or simply someone striving to reach your full potential, this podcast is your guide to unlocking the greatness within you. Join us as we dive into inspiring stories, practical strategies, and the mindset shifts that can transform your path to greatness. Let's embark on this journey together. Hey, welcome back to Pathways to Greatness podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Forrester. And on today's show, Coach Craig Kolek joins me. And I really enjoyed this one. This is, again, another Instagram connection just through the algorithm. He's a mental performance coach and he's in volleyball. So between the two of those, I don't know how I would have been able to miss him because the algorithm just pushed him in my way. And I really like his message. And he also has some really funny reels as well that he puts up that relates to if you've done anything in volleyball, club volleyball, you'll get all the humor that's there. But we had a really, really rich conversation that covered a lot of different things. And ultimately, it came down to culture and what are you going to do? And he shares some of his practical advice on culture. So if you want to have culture on your team, if you want to have culture in your home, if you want to have culture in your workplace, he gives you 3 easy steps to follow that is the foundation. And the ultimate thing that builds positive culture is time. And he doesn't make any false promises that culture can change overnight. It's a long, arduous process, but it's well worth it. So, ladies and gentlemen, Coach Craig Kolek. Okay, welcome back to the show. Well, Coach Craig and I have had probably a 20-minute conversation, and finally I just decided to hit record because there's been a lot of good stuff. Audience, this is Coach Craig Kolek, and I found him like I find so many of my guests on social media, and the algorithm will give you what you're looking for. And so Coach Craig is in volleyball, and he's also a mental performance coach. And so as my listeners know, I have a daughter that plays volleyball, and I'm all about mental performance. So, Coach, thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
And if you want to follow him, you need to follow him. Coach, what's your Instagram again?
It's at Coach Craig Kolek.
Okay. And that's Kolek, correct?
Yep.
Okay. I'll have all this in the notes, but I wanted to put that out there up front because if you're one of my volleyball parents that's listening to this show, he's got some great reels, and the one that he put up today was really good because it was just about going through nationals and then looking for a scholarship, and then all of a sudden everything's on fire because of your finances.
It's all so relatable, that's for sure.
Oh my goodness, yes. But anyways, Coach, so before we get started and going over some of the things that I want to speak about, is I like to play a game called Would You Rather. You ready?
Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Would you rather go forward 100 years or back 100 years?
Back 100 years.
Why so?
I would like to see, I'm big into history. I would like to see kind of what it was like then. And I also think what I've learned so far growing up through my life, I would be able to kind of maybe adjust some things and make some changes to myself and maybe the world too.
Do you think if you went back and you were able to talk to yourself that you would have listened to the advice that you would provide yourself?
Ooh, that's deep. I would hope that I would, but I think working with young athletes now, sometimes they're, as you know, like young athletes kind of think they know a lot, and they think that we don't know a lot. So trying to convince or help guide them to that answer, I don't know, probably not.
Yeah. And I think about that a lot because we talked about earlier, is we want to help the people who we once were. And that's why we get into coaching. Cause like I told you, I needed me at 15, 16. I needed me at 30. I needed me at 40. I needed the 52-year-old now then.
Yeah.
But I'm challenged also of how much would I have listened to, and where I may not have listened to it when I was 15, 16 or 18. I feel like that lesson would have stuck in there enough that maybe I would have pulled it out at 25 when I really need it and realized, oh yeah, people were just trying to help me and share information. So that's
Yeah.
what I hope.
Yeah. I think like going back to when I was in high school and even a little bit younger, like I was very unconfident. I grew up in sports with two older brothers and was super confident younger age, like really young age, playing hockey, playing baseball, playing other sports. Then things kind of shifted a little bit. I just lost confidence for various reasons. But I think in high school, I probably would not, like you said, probably would not have listened so much. But I think the advice that I had heard or would have heard, I would have used later in my 20s and maybe around 30, because I feel like I did that actually happen to me. You know, when 30 came around, I was finally like kind of picking up the pieces a little bit of, oh, that makes sense now.
Yeah. And I also think it comes down, and has to do with the athletes that you work with, but adults as well, is you have to want to change. You have
Yeah.
to realize, all right, what I'm doing is not working. And so I need to take the advice of others.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I
it's a
would
lesson
agree.
for all of us to think.
Still.
Yes, and want to improve. And like for me, I learned a lot from my mom because she was a student of learning, of self-development. And I remember even at a young age listening to Zig Ziglar tapes, and she was big into Amway. And so all of these
Yeah.
self-help, rah, everything is positive. And so I love that about her. And she's still the same way. And she's in her 70s.
Wow. Good for her.
Yeah. So it's that constant desire to learn and that we all can always improve.
Yeah. Yeah. I think having awareness of that, once that awareness sets in, I think it really takes off kind of like wildfire for you. You're like, okay, I need to learn more on this. But if you're not
Do you
aware of it,
have,
then,
yeah, and that brings up a really good point is thinking of the awareness. Do you have any kind of tactics or strategies that you use with your athletes on helping them become more self-aware?
for me with awareness, there's two, we hear about the growth mindset a lot, right? So that's kind of the catchphrase for the big catchphrase over the last decade or so. Um, it's really taken off, I think, for me by focusing on two things with athletes to gain awareness. It's what their beliefs are and what their focus is. And so when I'm working with athletes who are struggling with reaching their goals or just struggling with confidence, we kind of break it down a lot to, okay, what's your belief and what are you focusing on? And it has to do a lot with effort, challenges, mistakes, feedback, like how are they responding to those things? And then it goes back to what they believe and what their effort is again. So that's kind of been for me, that's kind of how I've gained awareness for myself working with clients so they can gain the awareness and then we can move forward with making some changes.
Yeah, do you find like around the belief part that, or let me rephrase the question. When you ask that and you start diving into belief, what do you see most in the athletes that are really struggling to break through that level? Like you see the talent, you see the skill, but there's just something that just is holding them back. And like you said, it's usually beliefs. What do you normally see?
I, the two biggest things, I think one is perfectionism and the other is comparison, especially as they get older. And then obviously in this age with social media, all you see is the good highlights on social media, but they don't really understand everybody's probably struggling as much as that social media looks good. But the comparison piece where I'm just not as good as him or her. And they start to believe that. And so they back down on the challenges. And then perfectionism is a big, for me, a lot of it with the athletes I've been working with, the perfectionism is a massive piece. And they're afraid to fight through what they believe in perfectionism. Like they feel like they need to be at this level at all times, even though just getting to this level is a massive step for them. So getting them to take it back down that it's okay to be good and not perfect and then having them start to maybe alter that belief. Like that's the biggest thing, the biggest challenge that I've had with perfectionism.
And I would imagine a lot of your high performing athletes, that's what's driving them of like, I can always be better. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough, which is self-destructive in the long run.
Yeah.
Because I know that there's a lot of adults that experience the same thing around, well, I'm not good enough. And I'm sure, if you got into counseling, it goes back really far and there's something that's right there. But from a perfectionism standpoint, is people struggle with that. How do you help them overcome that? Because I know that the audience in some part of their life, they still hold this idea of, I have to be perfect in how I show up on a daily basis, whether it's being a parent, a business person, or an athlete.
Yeah. Goal setting, for me, goal setting has been pretty good with helping with that. I think understanding that the real challenge is actually uh, uh, accepting the day-to-day stuff as wins, or losses, but then moving to the next day of elevating it to there. And then where you end up, it may not be that goal, that ultimate goal, but you're one step closer to it. And then we can always elevate the goals more. Like you reach a goal, great. We can, because we're not working for perfectionism, we're just working towards a lower level right now. We're able to still increase the level of competitiveness or the goals they're trying to reach or whatever they're trying to do with me. It allows them some leeway to be okay with themselves if they make some mistakes, love themselves a little bit, but let's get back to work the next day and still try to put the work in to get to that next step. So that's the goal setting for me is huge. And I don't think goal setting is taught enough, honestly. And I don't think it's taught well enough to help athletes or help adults, help whoever's trying to get past perfectionism.
Oh yeah, I 100% agree. And if we can, and what I like about what you said, and hopefully the audience picked up on it, it's breaking things down in small wins, because then you can start stacking those one on top of another, which is, it's all about momentum of just keep moving forward and not accepting that, well, I'm going to go backwards a step today. It's like, no, let's just, even if it's an inch, just what can you do to go forward? And if you feel like you went backwards, it could just be, well, what did I learn from that? And then there's the step forward again. Okay. Yep. So now we're on question 2.
All right. Nice.
That's why I like these questions. And I just try to chase the rabbits as we go. So would you rather always know the right answer or make the right decision?
Oh, I would rather make the right decision.
Okay. Why so?
I think for me, it means that I put a little bit of work in and put a little bit of self-reflection into what I'm trying to accomplish. So I believe there's a difference between reacting and responding. So reacting is whatever just happened, you just react to it. Responding is you took a few minutes, seconds, whatever it is, to think about it, take a breath, and then make a decision based on what you feel is the right direction to go. So that's kind of how I try to live my life anyways.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, as you said, it's easier said than done, but the fact that you're aware and disciplined to say, okay, I'm going to take a breath, whether it's 2, 3, 7, whatever. It's like, okay, how do I not respond or how do I not react, but respond?
Yep.
Okay. Perfect. Would you rather have pizza or tacos?
Pizza all day long. And then on Sunday, twice, morning, cold, and then another round hot at night.
Yeah, I love cold pizza.
It's the way to go.
Yeah. What do you have? What favorite? Thin, thick, Sicilian? Do you have anything particular?
I've been liking New York. I'm not going to admit this to any of my alumni, but because I have a bunch of alumni from New York, but I've been liking New York pizza lately. We've got a nice little shop in downtown where I live that does a pretty good pie. So, but thin is better for me. I'm a meat guy all day long, so throw the meats on there.
Yeah, just whatever it is, as long as it says meat and it's good.
Yep.
I like it. All right. Okay. If you came with a warning label, what would it say?
Sarcasm. Be aware of sarcasm.
Okay.
Or sarcasm awareness, or sarcasm be aware, or something like that. But I'm pretty sarcastic. I like to think that I'm very empathetic and very compassionate, but I like to kind of bust chops a little bit with my players and people that I love, and really kind of just, I mean, it has to be fun to get through the day and do what you're doing. Like, I'm a big believer that fun is a big piece of it, and it leads to a lot more connection. So I'm a pretty sarcastic guy.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's good. And I like the way you said it. You have to be consistent with sarcasm so people know that, well, he's like that with everybody. Now, and again, if it's mean spirited, it doesn't matter if you're with one person or with everybody. But if it's fun and doesn't cut to the core, then it can be enjoyable, and it usually will relax a situation.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because so I'm no longer coaching at college, but when my older students, my juniors and my seniors who knew me for 3 years, 2 years, whatever it was, they see me kind of going after the freshmen a little bit with some sarcastic answers and some little bit of see how they react. You can see the upperclassmen like, oh, I know what's going on. Like, they're kind of looking, waiting for the response with a smile on their face, because they know, like, there's no way this is being serious. But let's see what the younger guys do, or the younger girls.
Yeah. So they know it's coming.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. Well, Coach, I started Pathways to Greatness 3 years ago as a podcast, just out of interest in helping people see that there's different pathways to greatness. There's different definitions of greatness. And then along that path, nobody has a straight line. I've not yet met any people that have said, I started at A and then it was a straight line to B. There's ups and downs, twists and turns. We talked about resilience. We've talked about all these different challenges that people have to face. And what I want to do is bring people on like yourself who can help the audience hear tactics, some they may know to reinforce to continue to do, or some may be new that they can put in their quiver, so to speak, to be able to attack the day and to attack greatness of where they're going.
Yeah.
So with all that being said, what would you say your definition of greatness is?
My definition of greatness is, I think so for me, I would breaking that down a little bit. Whether you're an athlete, whether you're just a regular person, and everywhere in between, like, I think my definition of greatness would be, you put the work in to achieve a goal. You did kind of like we said earlier, you did day-to-day things and took steps to reaching to be better. And I think greatness, people think, like, for athletes, obviously the greatness is like we won championships and MVPs and things like that. I think just athletes in general and people in general, even if they just put a goal together and they put intentions into it daily to make strides towards it, that's greatness. Like, that's something that you're just trying to make a change in your life or trying to reach a goal in your life. And it's hard as hell to be able to do that. And like you said, it's not a straight line. It's backwards, 2 steps backwards, 1 step forward kind of thing. It's hard, so to be able to, at the end of the day, look back at the day and go, I made a step, and then I made another step the next day, and I made another step in a week. I think that's a big part of what being great being great as a human being is.
Yeah, and I really like how you framed that up, and hopefully the audience heard is writing things down. We can have a goal and it's there, but if you don't, at least for me, if I don't write things down, I have a really hard time of remembering where I was and where I'm at. And so as I look as progression, like we talked about earlier, just taking a few steps forward, writing it down shows you where you're at and tracking it and having a scoreboard.
Yeah. And it helps with your confidence as well. A lot of times when I'm working like with athletes, because I'll ask them, do you track things? Do you write things down? I'll ask them like, what'd you have for lunch in September on, Wednesday the 26th, right? And it was a month ago. They can't remember what it was. So that's an example. And then the other thing I'll talk to them too is like a lot of times they have a strength and conditioning coach who is tracking things for them, right? Or that the coach is telling them to track things. So that like I want to increase my bench press by a couple 100 pounds by September, and here's what I did yesterday. Here's what I'm doing tomorrow. They track things. Same thing with the daily stuff for you reaching goals. Exactly what you said. Like I think writing things down allows you to set intentions for what worked, what didn't work, and how do I make it better for tomorrow. And now you have a track record you can look back on after the end of the week and say, okay, look what I did. I can feel good about it because I did it, but then I can also make some adjustments if I need to help elevate to the next level I'm trying to get to.
Yeah, no, that's great. So Coach, share a little bit of your background of what you've done to, I would say, make you qualified to be the mental performance coach that you are now.
Sure. So I coached collegiate volleyball for nearly 3 decades, about 27 years. I've coached both the men's and the women's in college. So I've coached close to over 1,000 athletes. I've also been an athletic director at the college level for 20 years. So I have a lot of work with all the different teams that the university had. And I also worked with coaches and mentoring them because we had a lot of young coaches and becoming better coaches. So my experience is all through trial and error with my teams. And I always tell them that they were the guinea pigs, so sorry that didn't work, but I know that's not going to work. So I'm not going to use it on, some of the clients and athletes that I'm working with now. But it has given me a base of really understanding how the athlete thinks, how the athlete works, how to lead through compassion, understanding, and empathy, how to communicate. And all these things are what makes people great, first of all. And then athletes really become tighter with each other as far as culture and developing those bonds. And it now develops them for what they're trying to accomplish in their life as far as their families and their work and their future. So for me, my experiences in the college level is where I've kind of got all of my experience with the mental performance. Obviously, I've gone, like we talked about, Brian Kane, who's amazing, and gone through some courses to be able to fine tune things. But it's all been just real world experience with coaches, with athletic directors, with athletes at all different sports. I also coach club. So I coach 12-year-olds right now, 12, 14-year-olds. So that's fun for me at a different level. But the reason why I'm doing it is because I want to be able to, I really believe that leadership and mental resilience and confidence needs to be taught at a younger age. And we just don't do that enough. And I don't think we have enough leaders in the world to be able to explain, show, and demonstrate how to do that.
Awesome. Well, you know that you're singing my song when everything that you had shared. So one, thank you for seeing the need after you've coached, because so many people are like, okay, I've done my time. I've moved on, but you see the value in it so much so that you want to work with other clients that aren't your players. And then even more importantly, that really touches my heart is the 12 and 14-year-olds that you see. If you can start to equip them now, imagine what they're capable of at 15, at 16, at 18, at 22, as you move forward, that they now have the necessary skills to navigate life. They're still going to have issues and challenges, but hopefully you've made it where they can create a better system and a process to go through that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's the biggest thing for sure, is being able to give them tangible tools to be able to navigate life and everything that's going to be thrown at them.
So this wasn't anywhere that I thought I was going to go, but this just popped in my head. So as a coach and you think of the other coaches, we have, club, high school, and usually the club and the high school coaches, they do both, just like it sounds like from a college perspective, maybe not at the same time because there's too much, but you have that gist. Why do you feel coaches are so resistant to bring someone in like you, either A, to work with them and their staff to help them, or B, allow you to have that dotted line into the team to help equip your team better so the coach can just focus on volleyball, but then I've got Coach Craig or Coach Jeff to come in and help me with the mindset part?
I think for me, there's two things. One, some coaches are set in their ways. And this is kind of what you kind of go off of what you learned at a young age. Like leadership is what you learned at a young age, what leadership is. That's kind of how you start to lead. You may change it once you kind of realize maybe this isn't the right way, but how you were led when you were younger is how you begin to lead yourself and lead others. So I think stuck in their ways and is a big thing. And I think too, ego is a thing as well. And the other thing, like, for college people, especially high school, not so much, but college coaches, there's pressure now to, like, at all levels, you got to win or you got to get out. And there, as much as we know that building culture and building resilience is the way to win, they're focused on X's and O's, X's and O's, X's and O's. Like, this is how I win. We have to do this stuff on the court or on the field. X's and O's, X's and O's, X's and O's. But you're only as good as your culture. And so trying to have coaches understand that, and I think the coaches that know me have all brought me in. The coaches that don't know me, we have conversations and they show interest, and then it's really kind of, pushing a little bit more like, let's get in and talk to your team about this. This is going to make you a better coach. So I think if you can see the picture, if you can get the coaches to see the picture, the big picture of how it makes them a better coach, it's going to help their team, and maybe it's also going to help them down the road to get a better position. And, if they're looking to move on coaching wise at a different level. So yeah, it's a tough one. It really it always has been that way. And I think coaches are gun ho, and then they're kind of like, I've got too much stuff going on. And then they just kind of let it go. And then by the end of the year, they're like, I should have done more.
Yeah, and it's not any different than in the corporate world. We saw the same thing with sales leadership, is that organizations will spend a ton of money on the players or the salespeople or whoever, but then they miss the middle. And if you miss the middle, all of this was spent for nothing, because you can help the players build resilience, which is still worth it. If, however, the coaches in the middle don't reinforce that and they just keep pushing and pushing and pushing, the poor players just don't have the ability or the strength yet to counterbalance everything that's coming at them.
Right.
So I'm curious. So when we think about coaches, what are things that adults can do? Because this goes beyond that. Like I said, this is, what you shared is rampant across all adults. Is how do we then change our willingness to accept a new way of doing things?
Good question. From my point of view, if you're looking, you have to be a little bit selfish. If you're looking to get to a new level of what you're trying to accomplish, whether it's in the sports world or corporate world, is your way working? And if your way is working, then you're probably not going to change it. But if you're struggling with your way, or if you feel like you can still get to a different level, even though your way is working, then there should be more communication from you with who can make me better, who has the knowledge or has experience to be able to help me with this. Because if I get this help, it's not only going to help me, but it's going to help everybody I'm around. And I don't think people ask for help enough.
Yeah, and what you shared is, when things aren't working, that's when we have to really look. And that's hard. It's hard for people, like you said, is they just don't ask for help because of ego, because of perfectionism. Well, if I ask for help, then people are going to think I don't always have the answers. And, so there's a lot of that goes along with it. One thing that I was also thinking about is the challenge when people have success and they almost have too much success. There
Yeah.
was a reel that I reposted with Nick Saban said that and I'm going to butcher this, but really the challenge to greatness is talent.
Hmm.
And it really was going around as if you're too talented, you're never probably going to be great because you're going to rely too much on your talent over
Yeah.
the things that don't require talent.
Yeah. How powerful is that?
Yeah.
That's good.
Because how
And,
many 5 stars they hit a ceiling
yeah.
because their talent only takes them so far.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, this as a resilience coach and a coach just trying to build confidence and help people reach what they're trying to reach. It's about the effort, energy, and emotions that you put into it, right? Those are the players that are going to eventually probably become the 5-star talents because they're going to outwork, they're going to be more resilient, and they're going to know how to communicate with teammates.
Yeah, for sure. Well, looking over your right shoulder, I have to make sure I have the camera right. Yes, you have a volleyball for those of you who aren't watching that says 1,000 career wins. And that grabbed my attention, especially when we were talking about resilience, talking about greatness, that a lot of people would say, that's great, coach, 1,000 wins. And most people probably don't think that happened overnight. But so many
Um,
people expect greatness to happen overnight. So
yeah.
talk to me a little bit about really what was involved, if you thought of it, in those 1,000 wins.
Culture. The only way that I was going to get to where I wanted to go was that I had to have trust and connection with the players that I was coaching. Because once I got trust and connection, then that led to their commitment. And they bought in. And a lot of it was not necessarily the most talented of athletes when they came in, but the being able to understand the vision that we created together. Not just like I'm telling you this, like that's not a vision. That's me being a dictator. Like I want you guys to be involved in what you see the future to be. And this is every 4 years because this wasn't a transfer portal thing. This was I wanted players that played 4 years, right? So every 4 years you pretty much cycle through a new class, so to speak, of a whole team, right? So being able to develop culture that could be handed down class to class to class was really important to me because I knew that I could coach the skills, but I needed that culture, that family piece, that atmosphere of we're in this together and we're going to battle and we're going to learn things together and we're going to win together, we're going to lose together, but we're going to do everything together. And that is a long process. That's not just I say this and you do this because there's values involved. Your values are different than my values. It's different than his values. So now none of those values actually relate to the team values. So we have to have, as different as my values are, I have to have buy-in like, okay, these are the team values. I have to be willing to live by those, despite maybe one or two don't really go with my values, my personal values. So it's a lot. It's a lot of that over years to be able to build to it. And then the wins just honestly just happen. Like it's the culture piece is the biggest piece of them all. Like I said, I can teach the skill. We work hard on the court, but how we connect off the court makes it easier on the court.
Well, and I really liked what you said. And again, I like to draw the audience's attention to things that spark my interest, is that the 1,000 career wins wasn't your goal.
No.
Building a strong culture and developing student athletes into good humans sounds like that was the goal. And then along the way, the wins happen.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think coaches want to win. I don't think anybody gets into coaching to say that I want to win 1,000 games. I think they get into coaching because they are competitive. They love a sport. They love relationships, and they love developing and having people grow. And if you can do that, then success is bound to follow you.
So you gave us a couple of things that are necessary for culture. And so I want to provide the audience with some, I guess, a worksheet, so to speak, or just a small workshop on how to develop culture. So you talked about understanding and having a clear vision. You talked about understanding and having values specific to the team. So what are some of the other elements that you encourage other people to have when they're building their own culture?
Communication and transparency. Communication probably the biggest of the group, because once the communication breaks down, it snowballs. And then you have elephants in the room. You have all kinds of maybe he said, she said kind of stuff. You have things that are just getting bigger and bigger, and you're starting to lose control of that. So the more that we can communicate and just sit down as adults and just say, like, I had a problem with this. How can we adjust it? How can we make changes? Like, and a lot of time it's just it's a miscommunication, right? It was like a misunderstanding. But if you don't address it, you will not know. If you don't know, like I said, if you're not aware, it's not changing, and it's going to get bigger. So communication is probably the third piece of that, like you said, with the values and the vision. The communication to build off of those things is massive.
Now, let's say you're a player and you're on a team where the culture's not super great. There's some elements, some flashes. What would you coach and counsel a player that might be a client of yours that's challenged with the culture, and how they could try to impact without having authority and impact their teammates and even potentially their coach?
Focus on themselves and how they're showing up every day. People are going to start following if you're the hardest worker in the room, if you're the one who's putting out the effort, if you're the one who's not pointing for other people to do things, right? If you're the one that's the leader, the physical leader, doesn't have to be vocal as much. Vocal's great, but a lot of times I'm working with athletes that are like, I'm just not vocal. That's fine. I want you to be the hardest worker, the most effort, the most energy, the most supportive. And then when you feel like, even though you're supporting and you feel like it's not being received, do it again the next day. Because the more that you can just keep pounding that in, that's how you show up. People are going to start to follow that section of you, and they're going to start spreading themselves away from the bad culture, the bad apples, the bad whatever is presenting itself.
That's so good. And that's a lesson for all of us humans on this planet Earth. If we want things to change, it starts with us. It starts with us living and breathing that vision of positivity, of being a good neighbor, of encouraging one another. I had Coach Jeff Hubner on several episodes ago, and he talked about the power of positive gossip and what he has with his team. And when you hear that, what are some things that come to mind when you hear of the benefits of positive gossip?
Yeah, it's so funny. Like it's a double standard, right? Positive and gossip. You think of positive and negative, right? But that's awesome. Like that's really cool. Like if you're going to gossip, let's gossip in the right direction. Let's gossip with empowerment. Let's gossip with joy and love and compassion. Like let's gossip to get ourselves to be stronger as a group. And it's going to just change things.
Yeah, and I like what you said is it comes back to values and saying, having a line in the sand of, I'm not going to participate in negative gossip. And that's stuff that we can do as individuals. It's hard.
Yeah.
Because when people are chirping, especially in the sports world, then it's easy just to pile on the coach or pile on another player or whatever it may be. And in society, it's even easier. We see it every single day.
Yeah.
But if you as an individual draw that line in the sand and say, you know what? They're not here, so let's not talk negatively about them. What do you think that they did good? That's hard. That's really hard.
it's a super challenge. Like it's really hard. I think a lot of times too, like as young athletes, I feel like we don't explain enough, and as coaches, we don't demonstrate enough that people are out on the court trying. Nobody's on the court not trying. They're trying to do the best that they can, and so when mistakes happen, you have a choice as a teammate. What's your choice? You're going to support, or are you going to throw your arms in the air, roll your eyes, say something negative? There's two decisions there. So everybody, I cannot believe that somebody will be on the court not trying to do their best, especially on my teams. So let's get on board with that we all understand that.
Yeah, you have to meet Coach Jeff Hubner, because the other thing that he shared was always assume people are trying their best.
Yeah.
He's like, they didn't mean to pass it out of bounds. He's like, they didn't purposely did that. If they did, that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he's like, if I yell at him and like, what are you doing? He's like, well, they know they passed it out of bounds. They know they made the mistake versus why do you think that ball went out of bounds when you set up?
Yep.
They're going to receive it way differently. And I also like what you said is with teammates of don't throw your hands up and be like frustrated as a parent. Hello. When our kids make mistakes, understand that we're there to instruct and guide, not to get aggravated, because we're aggravated that when they don't do something that we know that they're capable of, but they're human. We can't pour in and reinforce that negative idea of I have to be perfect, otherwise everybody's going to yell at me.
Yeah, and it's funny too when you mentioned the parents, right? So love parents, but the kids are wired off the parents, and some parents don't get that. And I can tell you, kids notice when their parents walk into the gym. Kids notice where their parents are sitting in the bleachers. Kids notice what their parents are doing in the bleachers, and so if it's a negative, let's say, throwing hands in the air, swearing, whatever it is, my player, the kid, is now focusing on the parent rather than the game and how to get better and how to help the team, right? So that shifts the narrative of what they're focused on, and then it's also maybe going towards their beliefs all over again, right? So yeah, parents are a big plus on that too. Like we need to keep getting better and keep teaching parents as well.
Yeah. And it's us individually, because if they're doing it there, they're doing it in other places of their life. And so friends, loved ones, they're all expecting that same response of, well, wait till your dad gets home, or, you've been programmed to expect a certain response. But what if the response is kindness? If it's, there's a great book, Simon Sinek, Start With Why. I'm sure you've read it or heard of it.
Yep.
But he talks about, and this had a big impact on me, is that it goes back to what you said about assuming, is that if somebody's not performing at their best, let's say in the workplace, it's not like, I can't believe that you didn't hit this month's numbers. You've done it every quarter, whatever, versus going in and say, you know what? It's interesting. This month you didn't hit your numbers. Tell me what's going on. Because you don't know what's happening. There's other things probably going on that we just aren't aware of.
Yeah. Yep. It's such a powerful question to start off with. You'll get more answers. You'll get to the root of it quicker.
And it's all tone.
Yep.
It's all tone. How like when you're coaching players, and again, you shared earlier, sometimes coaches are just coaches. They communicate one way. They yell and holler. How do you help athletes, and this is something that adults, non-athletes can take advantage of as well, to not confuse the message from the delivery?
So two things. One, before I answer that question, I want to kind of go back to the why with the coaches. A lot of times, the most powerful thing I believe you can do as a coach is ask a player what just happened there. So when they made a mistake, rather than barking at them a little bit, what just happened there? If they can explain it, then they know. If they know, they can make changes, right? So that for me, like that's super powerful. That goes back to the why. Like, what are you doing as a coach? Empower them to coach themselves a little bit, because if you're doing that, then you're doing your job as a coach. And then kind of the second part of the question, sorry, say that one more time, the question again.
Well, it's about not confusing the message with the delivery.
Yeah. So it all goes back to me. If you can communicate the right way, you're building trust. And if you're building trust, you have that connection. And so once you have trust and connection, you can coach. And by that, I mean, you can get them to perform better with more direct communication. And you don't have to necessarily sugarcoat things, because for me, like my players know when I coach them, it's coming from a place of love. I am not a yeller. I will yell every now and then if I need to, but I'm direct. And I can have this look on my face. The package could be totally like like nutso, but it's like I just got to get the point across, because I've got to get to other things going on in practice as well with this drill that's happening, right? So, hey, you're going to move your feet on that pass. Don't mind the look. It's not a scowl. It's just I'm just being direct and moving from there. And I've found the biggest thing after, like, coaches, to me, like, it's mind-boggling that they don't show up early to practice or they don't stay late after practice. And those are two zones that I think are hugely important in building that trust. That would help them more in practices, because you can have one-on-one conversations that are very quick, very easy. Ask the question why, what's going on, how's your day, whatever it is. And then after practice, it could be a simple like, hey, I love the effort that you did today. Like, I know the skill level wasn't there. You made a lot of mistakes, but the effort was unbelievable. Let's bring that again tomorrow. It just reinforces how you can do it. I am a believer in coaches, and I believe that coaches coach because they care and they want players to get better. Do they necessarily do it the right way all the time? No. Does everybody do it the same way? No. So you have to read the crowd a little bit as a player, and you got to build a little bit of resilience. Like, if I trust coach, and I'm not saying mentally abusive things should happen, I'm not saying any physical abuse should happen, but if you trust coach, if he gets on you a little bit, it's because he sees the potential in you to get better. And that's the biggest thing. And that's, if you have that trust and that connection, you will find the right coach for you.
And I like that part of it, because there's a right coach for everybody. Like, thinking of John Wooden and Bobby Knight. I'm not a Bobby Knight guy.
Yeah.
Meaning that I would not prosper in that environment of being yelled at, being screamed at. Like, I've never been around that. And so that just would frustrate me. But there's some players, and his record speaks for itself, that responded really well and did fine with that and flourished. And then I would be more of a John Wooden guy, that I need some of that understanding, that coach that really will give me the why and explain it. And it's just the way I am. So yeah. I think it's important for athletes to hear what you had to say, is that, and parents as well, is find a coach that works best for your athlete.
Yeah.
And it may not be the program that you think it would be. But ultimately for life, you've got to find that coach that's going to be alongside them.
Yeah. I don't think high school students and parents and families do enough research on coaches when they're looking at colleges. Because ultimately that's the person you're going to be wired off of, your coach, just like you're wired from your parents at a young age and throughout. When you're in college, you're wired off your coach. So if your coach is Looney Tunes, you're going to be Looney Tunes. So if your coach can smile through mistakes, then you're going to learn how to smile through mistakes. And not everybody's the same, but you can find the right one for you.
Yeah, I love that piece of advice. And then I like where you had shared is that, the players become the coaches that coached them if they go back into coaching, because that's what they knew. And there was an example one time where there was a coach who shared a story that they were almost out of volleyball. They were done. They just knew they were about to hang it up because of a coach that they had. Well, fast forward when they became a coach, they were doing, I don't know if they were doing the exact same thing, but they were doing the result was becoming the same where players wanted to quit because of that. And so it's like, well, shouldn't you know that you need to have a better connection, because the things that frustrated you the most, you're now repeating. But parenting, it's the same thing. We become the parents that our parents were,
Yeah.
unless we make a decision, like you said earlier, be self-aware and make a decision of, I'm going to break the cycle if it's not a healthy cycle, and try to do things differently.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so good.
It's cyclical. Well, Coach, I know we talked a whole bunch beforehand. I want to be very sensitive of your time. So what would be a leaving remark that you'd like to leave the audience with today?
For me, understand that compassion, understanding, and empathy goes a long way with everybody in the world, but athletes flourish with that type of leadership.
I would agree 100%. And how can people find and follow you?
So I'm on Instagram, I'm at Coach Craig Kolek, CraigKolek. That's the best way to get a hold of me. I do have Facebook. It's CCK Mental Performance Training, but Instagram's generally kind of my wheelhouse right now with everybody reaching out to me. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And I'll get everything from Coach Craig to put in the show notes. So if you're listening to this and you want to understand a little bit more about who he is and follow him, I'll have those in the show notes. Coach, thank you. I really appreciated this. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Yeah, no problem. Well, hang on real tight, real quick. But everybody, Coach Craig Kolek.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for joining us on the Pathways to Greatness podcast. We hope that today's conversation inspired you to take steps towards your own greatness. Remember, every journey starts with a single step. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who might benefit. Actually, share it with 3 people that you might think it might benefit. Until next time, keep pursuing your passions and carving your own path to greatness. Take care.